We've got a lot of different kinds of clinicians there, social workers, psychologists, marriage and family therapists. We have a couple of Gottman experts, music therapy, and so we have a very holistic approach to what we do. And so today we're going to be talking about radical self-acceptance, and we're going to kick it off with Dr. Melody French, and then I'll chat a little bit, and then Dana will be up last. So this is interactive. If you guys have questions or whatever, feel free to jump in. We would love you to be a part of the overall experience.
Great. Hi, I'm Dr. Melody French. Glad to be here with you all today to talk about radical self-acceptance. And in honor of October being National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we're going to frame our talk around that topic. Radical self-acceptance is welcoming all the lost, distanced, and rejected parts of ourselves to center to wholeness. This includes the self of feeling angry, needy, jealous, fearful, and ashamed. Fine or good, this all sounds like a lofty goal. Let's embrace these unwanted or difficult emotions. But how do you practice self-acceptance, let alone a radical self-acceptance, when the world is crumbling around you or it feels like the rug is literally being pulled out from under you? When you love someone who is experiencing or exposed to domestic violence. So before we speak more about the tools and techniques for healing and self-acceptance, I'm going to elaborate more on how this strange societal problem of domestic violence impacts the most vulnerable among us, the children. These aren't the easiest statistics to go through, but this is our reality. 3.3 million to 10 million children exposed to domestic violence a year. That's 1 in 4 over their lifetime, and over a year, 1 in 9 experience exposure to domestic violence. The research has changed from just calling it witnessing domestic violence. It doesn't matter if you've actually seen the violence happen, if you've just heard it behind closed doors. Being exposed means being aware that it's going on in the house. Maybe it's coming home and finding the home disrupted or safely being in shelter. Children that are exposed to violence are more likely to attempt suicide, use drugs and alcohol, run away from home, engage in teenage prostitution, and commit sexual assault. Girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rates of intimate partner violence. And I know here at Sovereign Adolescent Program, this is your population. And unfortunately, 2.8 million children run away each year, and within 48 hours, a third of these children are lured or recruited into the underground world of prostitution and pornography. So, of course, there's a great impact. But I guess the good news is not everyone is impacted equally. There's a lot of resilience. Not everyone experiences trauma. When children are affected, you often see aggression, anxiety, depression problems, PTSD. It all happens within a culture of silence. So, why does it happen? Why is this silence happening? We know this is a problem. Why is this still going on? One of the biggest factors is the culture of silence. There are multidimensional and multi-generational factors going on, and silence is due to the stigma and shame. And then there's a secondary shame that happens, shame for being ashamed. So it's further covering the original shame. Which I thought it was interesting finding that the root of the word shame literally comes from to cover. You just think of that emotion of shame, whether it's from our personal experience or sitting with our young clients and imagining what they're going through, these feelings of being a deficit, deficient in the world, feelings of being a worthless failure, and then there's another secondary series of emotions. Try to cover up all those original primary feelings. So what are different covering strategies? Tara Brach in her book called Radical Self-Acceptance talks about various covering strategies. Running away from common ways of doing that, or even substance abuse, gambling, addiction. This all numbs or dulls our experience of shame. And Tara Brock talked about fighting our way out, or overperforming or striving. Maybe we even see this in, like folks using overperformance to try to cover up fear of being neglected or encouraged. So what do children exposed to domestic violence need? And this is what I want to stress is resiliency and neuroplasticity. And I want to mention Daniel Siegel's work, The Developing Mind. He talks about the attunement and emotional regulation that happens in relationships. So I just want to give an example of a parent soothing a crying child, and just point out that what's happening there at the biological level, the neural level, is the non-reactive soother who's responding to the cries is calm and soothing with a there, and each time there's a stroke of a there, a calming presence, that brain literally responds and grows regulated, thus creating more neural pathways and skills of self-soothing and self-regulation. So our clients that come to us are youth who come from having witnessed or been exposed to domestic violence, having that relationship, preferably with the primary attachment figure, is going to be one of their strongest resiliency factors. Radical self-acceptance is a tool for domestic violence survivors and therapists to use in order to achieve resiliency and neuroplasticity. And what I'm going to talk about next is mindfulness as a path to this radical self-acceptance. And what I mean by mindfulness is a moment-to-moment practice of grounding yourself into the self in the present. It's about noticing the self, having an experience, rather than narrating a personal story about it. Like, I can notice I am speaking to you all, some of you are looking at me, some of you aren't, rather than like, gosh, I was like this next, or I'm so nervous about being here. Present moment is about just being in the moment without a narration going on. So 2 ways of getting to mindfulness, which I don't know what you all know about mindfulness, but it may just seem so basic. I'm going to talk about breath and somatosensory awareness, which is a fancy word for body awareness. So those 2 tools are what can bring us to the present moment. 2 resources I want to mention, if anyone's interested in learning more about this, is a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook by Stahl and Goldstein. And also there are resources on websites like the Center for Mindfulness Self-Compassion. And also San Diego has it. University of California and San Diego Center for Mindfulness trainings over there. It is grounding to become aware of physical sensations in your body, like the breath, which is a constant physical sensation that can be noticed anytime you pay attention to it. And more research is showing that this very grounding of coming back to the breath is creating that resiliency, and almost like that attunement. Instead of with the attachment figure, then it becomes an attunement with one's own inner processing. So anytime there can be a break from the narration, the judgment, and just coming back to a pure sensory awareness in the moment, there's a self-acceptance. Ultimate goal is just self-love and embracing things as they are. Radically accept yourself in this moment, both the gritty and the radiant. Break the silence against domestic violence, uncover stigma and shame, draw resiliency from self-regulation, skills learned through mindfulness, such as using the breath and body awareness. And both of these it sounds basic, it is basic, and sometimes that's what we need in therapy, is just help coming back to the present moment. Imagine life without anxiety, accepting yourself just as you are, this life, this appearance, these behaviors, this body, this set of circumstances. And I'll end with this Japanese saying that I found useful once I heard Mary share this. It's worth resharing. The concept is perfection is only with imperfection. There's no perfection without imperfection. So Angie's going to talk next more about radical self-acceptance.
So, as Melanie was talking about our imperfections, it is a regular job to practice forgiveness of our mistakes on an ongoing basis, because we can often get into our heads in our narration, but sometimes it's hard to get out of that group of just feeling or thinking in one way, especially if we're trained in a domestic violence type situation that we're in crisis. We have to dodge, we have to seek safety. And so we get stuck there. So we want to have courage to tell our story and, you know, not being immune to the criticism, because staying vulnerable is a risk that we have to take if we really want to feel connected. And so that's a quote from Brene Brown. You've probably read some of her stuff. She's fantastic. But that's what I would encourage you to do, as well as encouraging your clients to have that courage to step out and share their story. And of course, this comes in steps, right? It's not going to be someone who's in crisis right now that might tell their entire story, but you're going to do it in stages with your clients. And so how do we get to this point? We have to work on accepting the imperfection. So a few more quotes from Brene Brown. Perfectionism never happens in a vacuum. It touches everyone around us. We pass it down to our children, and it's suffocating for our friends and our families. So do you feel that it has been passed down to you at all, in any way, shape, or form? For me, I can speak to like an aunt that I had, and you go to her house and everything is like just perfect, right? Everything, you can't touch anything because it's in place and everything has its area. And we felt ourselves getting more dressed up or putting more makeup on or doing our hair better to go over to her house versus maybe our other aunt where we could be a little bit more relaxed with. So that's how I felt the perfectionism kind of being passed down in my own family. And so where have you seen that kind of show up in your life?
Church. Yes. Growing up, they have like strict rules of what you had to wear and how you needed to present yourself. So I didn't want to do that at all. I just wanted to wear jeans and a t-shirt, but I felt like I needed to be perfect for them. So I would, change the way I looked for them.
It kind of kept you in this little area of what they expected, whether or not you felt congruent with it or not.
Also, the child raised how I was raised, essentially. The mannerisms that I was expected to have, which is so much different than today. Yes, sir, no, sir. My children. Or even comparison to my older brother. Sitting rivalry, or just being, parents comparing him to me.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You can take two siblings in one family system and see how different their experience was within that family, right? And often the parent will kind of do that unfair comparison thing that, occurs because, they're trying to motivate you and they're doing the best that they can or whatever the circumstances are. But absolutely, we're seeing a complete drastic change now to the other spectrum of things, right? Versus, even 20 years ago, you saw more manners. You just don't see it as much now. When you do, it's more of a rarity. I think a lot of it comes from culture and society now. You can't just have a bachelor's degree anymore. You need a lot of education, and even if you do have a master's degree, sometimes that's not even enough. I don't know if you felt that way. I've certainly felt that way. So that's pressure from society to be just like this perfect, smart, successful, young, amazing career person, right? But guess what? Have a family, go to church, be an amazing son, like all these things to be this perfect person.
And be beautiful. Don't
Yes.
forget that.
Yes. So think of a time maybe in your life when you took the time to say, this is what has happened to me. This is my story. So maybe you were shopping in Target or something, right? You have little kids at home or whatever, and you're witnessing like a toddler having a tantrum, and you go up to that mom and you just gracefully smile and you say, she looks tired today. And you meet that mom where they're at. That is so refreshing. And so I'm wondering just if you've done that in your life, and if so, how did that feel to do that or to receive it? So let's say someone took a time in your life, or you've done this, where you've shared a part of your story out in public to just join with another human being to kind of experience that connection.
I think we often do that intake here. Not only are we trying to help the parents feel comfortable, but also the children. And they're always like, well, how do you know? Or you don't know. So I think often here we'll give like a little piece of what we have so they can, quickly understand, okay, these people have been there before, they have experienced that. So I think we do that a lot here.
Every day, right? Every intake, every person, right? So this is from her book, if you haven't read it, The Gifts of Imperfection. Fabulous, really quick read. So as we begin to accept our imperfections, we can get to a place of self-forgiveness. And here's a definition of forgiveness up there, just from dictionary.com. It says, act of forgiving, state of being forgiven, and disposition or willingness to forgive. Agree, disagree? Does it cover everything? Because forgiveness is a bit of a interesting word to think about, especially if we're talking about different offenses and things that have happened to people in their lives. So what we can see happening is that little kids, for example, can take the blame of their circumstances, whether it's true or not, to try to understand or gain some control over a chaotic situation. So you might have a young child saying, if I'm quiet enough, mom won't get mad and start hitting us again. And what happens is then that child assumes the dysfunctional role of the shame and the pain for that family. And so the research has shown that forgiveness of yourself is actually more impactful than forgiveness of others. And we don't focus on that. We focus on giving it, receiving it. And so what's the most courageous thing that you could do for yourself when you feel small or hurt? And so here are some steps for forgiveness, and you can use either of these models just for yourself, for your own self-care, or with your clients. So realization, this is what happened to cause the pain and the suffering. Then there's recognition, an assessment of the actual incident itself, reparation, confrontation, admission, and then asking for forgiveness. There's restitution, making amends, and then resolution, surrendering past hurts. And then here it's simplified a little bit more. So the first step you would walk a client through or yourself is, something awful happened to me. And then what was that awful thing and how did it make me feel? And then step 3 is, who hurt you? You can pass that on. And forgive me for, where were you in this situation? And then I'm sorry for staying or not leaving, not being able to help. And then resolution, I'm letting go of what happened, why I was involved, and how you hurt me. So another model I want to show you here is the Enright forgiveness process. And the preliminaries on the handout you can see walks through similar steps of who hurt you, how deeply were you hurt, which specific incident do you want to focus on, what were the circumstances, getting very detailed, was it morning or afternoon, cloudy or sunny out. So you really want to take that person back to the experience of what actually happened. And of course they have to be ready for even the preliminary stage, right? You can't just do this in the first or even the second session. Sometimes with children who are very, very dramatically abused, you have to wait a very long time. Phase 1, uncovering your anger. How have you avoided dealing with anger? Have you faced your anger? Has your anger affected your health? Do you compare your situation with that of the offender? Has the injury caused a permanent change in your life? Has it changed your world view? So this is where they start to kind of open things up a little bit and dig a little bit deeper. Once they've been able to understand that process and where they've been, they can decide to forgive. Being willing to begin the forgiveness process. And they may be doing this for themselves. Maybe they feel bad because they've kept their kids in a situation that they felt they could not leave. And they feel awful about that. But they haven't forgiven themselves yet for staying there. I don't know. And then it's a work in process, working on forgiveness, working towards understanding, compassion, accepting the pain. And it can give the offender a gift, just the gift of forgiveness. What happens is that it's a release from an emotional prison. You discover that you're not alone and that you do have purpose and that there's some freedom. I wanted you to have this. And so what we mentioned earlier is that a lot of the times with forgiveness, we focus on reconciliation versus justice. Well, what will we do to him or her who has done these horrible things? We need to have justice. We need to make sure that they are served for the things that they have done. And usually we focus on those aspects versus the healing aspects of what can actually take place and occur. And forgiveness, we seek it, we offer it, and sometimes it's difficult to receive. But can we also offer it to ourselves? So some interventions I actually like to use with kids is using forgiveness glasses. So I will put on my sunglasses in the therapy room and I'll have them put on theirs. And I ask them if they can see with new eyes. And so maybe they still have to have visitations with the abusing parent, and how can they still interact in a positive way with that person? Or maybe it's that they've been having a lot of conflict with their brother or sister and they're really upset with them and it's not a domestic violence situation and they need to start to see their brother or sister with a new set of eyes. And you can ask them to tell you one good thing about that person. Trying to separate what they have done from the actual person. And so we're teaching children to be tough-minded but tender-hearted. It's this internal transformation and letting go of the anger. If they continue to hold on to the anger, it's going to be internalized, it's going to be turned into shame, they're going to feel that they are the ones that are responsible for the system's dysfunction. Then we see the stuff that Melody was talking about, right? The avoidance, the escapism, the drug use, the, freezing, fighting, fleeing. So I'd encourage you to rewrite your story, because actually creating these new schemas in your thought process can enhance growth by letting go of the negativity. It's facilitated by making a decision and letting go of the anger. It's okay if you're not ready to decide to do that, and it's okay if you'll never forget. There's a difference, right, of forgiving and forgetting. But letting go is this journey of many incremental steps. And so one way that I like to let go is to create health in my life by being really active. And they've done studies that have shown that the more anger and sadness and shame that we hold on to, the higher we are at risk for disease. And so we can exercise or use our diets and then also engage in self-care to create that health in our life, even if we didn't get it from our families. So now Dana's gonna talk a little bit more about how to keep that health going.
Hi. So, if you met yourself at a party, would you be impressed? Would you say, hey, I want to get to know you better, you have something very interesting about you, or, I need to get some chips and salsa over here, I'll go check yourself out. So, the way that you answer that question says a lot about your self-esteem and how healthy you view yourself, right? So, unfortunately, with a lot of clients that have been involved in domestic violence or have had some sort of tragedy happen in their life, their self-esteem is at a low. And so what I wanted to talk about is it doesn't have to stay that way. There's some interventions that we can do to change it. We can learn some new insights and ways of thinking and some behavior patterns. One of the things I like to talk about first is what is the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. Does anybody have a good definition without looking at my board? Right? Anything? Johanna, what would you say is the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem?
I think probably what you project in yourself and what you project out to the world.
Right? So it's the difference between how we view ourselves and what we share with the world. Were you raising your hand to share? Because I'd let you. So the way I describe self-confidence is it's just what you said. I project to the outside world. I'm a good employee. I always show up on time. I turn everything in on time. I'm responsible. Great. So how come I can still feel bad about myself sometimes, right? That's where my self-esteem kicks in. Those are the things that feel really important to me. If I'm a good mom or a good spouse or a good child, right? Those are the things that we hold value about, and sometimes those are the things that we just can't conceive. Why do I have so much confidence in who I am, present to the outside world, but the way that I feel inside feels so bad? So that's what I want to talk about today is what are the common thoughts and behaviors that get in the way of us having good self-esteem? And what are the things that we can do to start to feel better about ourselves so that we can build self-esteem? So one of the things that I hear happens a lot is there's a situation where we have what we therapists call broken I am beliefs, right? So you grow up, you have no concept of who you are, you don't know what your personality is like, you don't know what your interests are. Wow, I have this fly that really likes me, sorry. And so you start to take on all these external messages from others, right? Oh, Susie, stop talking, you're always talking, you're talking so loud, or you're not a good child, be a good boy, you're not a good student, you're not good at science, you're not smart, right? So because we have no concept of ourselves, we take on these outside beliefs and make them what we think about ourselves. And so if we constantly hear that as a child, those I am beliefs start to be whatever we've absorbed from the outside. So one of the things that happens is that we start to take those internal messages and they become shame, and they also make us somehow feel inadequate. So one of the things that I like to do with clients is to start changing those internal messages that we have about ourselves with some affirmations. So my lovely assistant is going to pass out some affirmations that I really like to use with clients. They're really easy to do. You can stick them up on the mirror in the bathroom when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. You can, when you're stuck on the 5 in traffic, you can read your affirmations aloud in the car. Everybody will just think you're talking on your cell phone. But it's good practice to start using some affirmations to start changing those shameful messages that we've somehow internalized about ourselves. And I also like to talk to clients about our inner critic. So how many of us are present enough, as Melody mentioned, being present to notice that we're having these horrible messages that we tell ourselves all day long, over and over and over again, right? I'm lazy, I'm sloppy, I need to be a better employee, I need to, get better at this job because it's only a matter of time until they realize I'm horrible and they fire me, right? All these horrible, horrible internal critic messages. And so one of the things that I like to tell clients is to actually visualize a red stop sign, right? If it helps, put your hand out and stop and say, no, 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 I'm not having that thought. We're not going there today. And then just change the subject, right? In your mind, start focusing that energy on something that's more time productive. What am I going to buy at the grocery store today? What time do I have to pick up Susie from school? What am I going to do when I get off work today, right? You can take that energy, stop it before it starts to lead to a bad feeling about yourself. Another friend of ours is perfectionism. How many of you are perfectionists? Probably all of you. You've managed to have a very successful career. That takes a certain amount of perfectionism. And so what happens to us when we're perfectionists is that we start to hold ourselves to an unmanageable standard that nobody else knows about other than we. Because there is not a book on perfectionism that I have in my office to tell you what is actually perfect. It's something that we all put in to our own belief system, and because we feel that we can never be perfect, we procrastinate, right? So when we procrastinate, what happens? We then never get it done. It's never close to perfect, and then we just beat ourselves up and tell us that we're bad again, we're not a good person, we never get anything done, we're not good time management, it's just a vicious circle. So one of the two things that we can do, I am not tech savvy, sorry. One of the few things that we can do to start working on our procrastination is to start to realize the concept of good enough. There is a good enough. Once you check mark all the check marks and you put your I's on top of the I's and your T's on top of the T's, it's okay to turn it in. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your best, you shouldn't try very hard to get it as good as you can get it, but you can actually step away and go, you know what, I did this project, I did it completely, it's a good job, it's good enough. I don't need to stress over it anymore. And then also to remind yourself that buying into those myths of perfectionism are only going to hurt you and your family in the long run, because at some point you're going to start to expect that of everybody else in your life, and it's going to create a lot of negativity, and those feelings are just going to be kind of skyrocketed and spin out of control. So perfectionism is not our friend when we are working on our self-esteem. Another problem is comparison, right? How many times have I gone on Facebook and decided that I am not living a very interesting life because I did not go to Disneyland last week and I have not scaled the Himalayas, right? So I therefore am not an interesting person. I can just prove it by looking at all the social media. Okay, great. What if I just started comparing myself to myself? What if I actually looked at in the last year all the goals that I've completed that I didn't think that I could do? Or look back on my life and look where I used to be and where I'm at now. It's a much healthier way of doing comparison, and it's something that is valuable and can help us with our self-esteem. Also looking at the ways that we handle mistakes and failures in a more positive way. I absolutely want to assure you that anything that you do that has great risk, you will probably fail at. In some short way, long way, big way, and it's how we handle those mistakes that really help us with our self-confidence and with our self-esteem. So one of the ways that you can start looking at stumbles is, how would your best friend tell you to do it? Or how would your mom tell you to do it? Would they help you put it in better perspective? Is it really the end of the world, what happened, or 5 days from now are you going to forget that it even happened? How would your mom say, you know what, honey, you tried your best, you did a really good job, you showed up, you suited up, you did a great job today, I'm really proud of you. Why is it that we're so much harder on ourselves than our friends and our family would be on us? And then also, what's the upside? Okay, I screwed up that presentation. I forgot to bring my notes with me and I had to wing it and I didn't feel as prepared. What did I learn from that? Moving forward, what will I do to make sure that I am prepared so that I have more confidence about it? What can I do to make this a better experience? Yes, I am going to fail and I accept that, and there's going to be some parts that I take away from it that are great. And so a few self-appreciation techniques that I like to work with clients is we can take a few minutes of self-appreciation breaks during the day. So if we're taking our coffee break, we're taking our smoke break, whatever kind of break it is that you take, can you stop and find 3 really valuable things about yourself that you did? Small. I went for a walk today. I had some carrots instead of a cupcake. I did something that was valuable for me that I did just to make my day better and that I can appreciate about myself, that I gave myself some self-care, right? It will build your self-esteem over time, and it certainly helps with a negative mood to turn it into a positive one. By the same token, at nighttime, be old school, grab a piece of paper and a pencil and actually write down some amazing things about yourself or some accomplishments. Research shows that the actual process of writing it with a pen and paper helps reinforce it more. And so clients also who are having a really bad day and it's like, you know what, all I can come up with today is I put both my shoes on and they matched. Great. Look at the last 3 weeks. Look what you did. Look at all the things that you can look back on and say, wow, you know, I might just be having a bad day because when I look back over the last few weeks, I have really accomplished a lot. I have been noticing that I am feeling better about myself and I'm able to be present with all of the accomplishments that I'm doing. And so the last one is my favorite, and I think it's the most valuable. Simply be kinder to everybody else in the world around you. Research shows that when you're kinder towards others, people are kind back to you, and it starts to build a cycle of healthy self-esteem. So I have some very easy ways for you guys to be kinder to others in case you're stuck on ways to do it. Be there and listen when somebody needs to vent. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to have the answers. Just being present with them and giving that space is a nice gift to give to someone else. Hold the door open when somebody's coming in or out and their hands are full. Don't act like, oh, good luck with all that, and let them, hit it in the face. I don't think you guys would do that, but be conscious of what's going on around you. How can you help somebody out? Can you let another car over that's got a signal on that you see is desperately trying to get over to get into the lane of traffic? It's okay, you can be 2 seconds late. Just let them come over into your lane. And encourage family and friends to try new things, and let them know how proud that you are of them, that they've even tried it, or if they feel insecure about something, remind them of the things that they're really good at that will help them succeed in those experiences. And so we would like to thank you very much for being present and paying such excellent attention. It's obviously not easy to stand up here and tell a bunch of other therapists how to be a better therapist, so we appreciate you guys participating. Thank you. And if you have any questions, we can certainly answer them for you, and if you want to be on our email newsletter list, we'll be happy to get your information if you'd like those. So are there any questions for any of us? I didn't think so. Okay, thank you.
Gracias.